Hello and welcome to the Northwood Podcast. I'm your host, Heath Jones. And if you follow us, you'll have probably noticed that I haven't posted a new episode in about 6 weeks, maybe even 7 weeks. And I haven't had it in me to tell you why until very recently. Long answer short, my mental health has not been well for some time. And I've left these issues unaddressed for many years, keeping my anxiety and my depression at bay with exercise, spiritual disciplines, and other means of coping. But several months ago, my means of coping just began to be less effective, and then they just completely stopped cutting it. Exercise, spiritual disciplines, all of the things I was trying, nothing seemed to be working. So eventually, nothing I tried seemed to assuage my anxiety, and my depression was becoming more and more entrenched and far more serious. And so, on the second Sunday in February, I found myself standing behind the communion table in my role as pastor, in front of people, during morning worship, feeling confused and disoriented. I hardly knew where I was at some points in time, although I kept saying churchy things that seemed fitting, and I don't think many people noticed, but inside I was very confused. And after the service, it was clear to my wife Kelly and I that we were long overdue for some sort of intervention. So in the meantime, I've sought professional, medical, and therapeutic help. And during these past 2 months, I've met with mental health professionals and a therapist. And I even started taking medication to help me with my depression and anxiety. And the good news is I'm already beginning to feel better than I have in many months. In fact, I feel better than I've felt in years. Although I'm not completely out of the woods, I mean, are we ever? One of the things I learned through this is that we're never, I don't think, completely out of the woods. But in addition to therapy and medicine, I needed time, which is why you haven't heard from me in some time. Time for my head to feel right and to regain my mental and emotional strength. And this is hard for me because I've sensed momentum building here at our church, at Northwood Christian Church, and I haven't wanted to lose any precious time. But when you need to take care of yourself, you need to take care of yourself. And so I've had to trust that God would take care of our church with or without me. And this is what has happened. I have learned that the church does not rise and fall with me. God builds the church. I just try to play a part. But now I'm back, and I'm still working on my mental health, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that going forward. I want to be candid and transparent about that because I think it'll be helpful for others going through similar things. In the meantime, it's Easter. And I'm recording this on Maundy, Thursday, the day where we remember the Last Supper, where Jesus ate with his friends, when all seemed to be going according to plan, at least so far as Jesus' disciples thought. But just hours later, their world would be upended. Jesus would be arrested, then killed, and the light of Easter morning wasn't even yet warming the horizon. In fact, the disciples didn't think the light was coming. And perhaps maybe your life has felt similarly bleak of late. And if so, know this, that your help will find you. Easter is coming, along with its message of hope and restoration that will permeate your life, I hope. And after what I've been through of late, I feel that I myself can speak from experience that Easter is coming. Help is on the way. And we'll come back to those themes in a moment, but first, we'll pause for an ad break for our podcast audience. Here's a moment for some ads. 2, 3, 4, and we're back. And we're going to begin by reading the Gospel of Matthew, his account of Jesus' resurrection specifically. You can find it in the 28th chapter of Matthew, verses 1 through 10. So here goes. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly there was a great earthquake. For an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. For fear of him, the guards shook and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised. As he said, come, see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has been raised from the dead, and indeed he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. This is my message for you." So they left the tomb quickly, with fear and great joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly, Jesus met them and said, "Greetings!" And they came to him, took hold of his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers and sisters to go to Galilee. There they will see me." Here we go again. My yearly exercise of suspending disbelief so that I might open myself up to the truly unbelievable. And what cannot be believed? That's simple to answer. That after Jesus was killed, he came back to life. I say cannot be believed, but many do believe that. And what I'm saying is, I guess I understand why you wouldn't. Which is why on Easter, around this time of year, I suspend all disbelief and choose to look at life through this lens. What possibilities open up if Jesus came back? And the gospel writers made sure that we understood what Jesus was up against and the forces that he was willing to confront before his death. And make no mistake, the forces arrayed at Jesus were insurmountable. From the Roman Empire and all of its might to the local authorities who viewed Jesus as a threat, the deck seemed stacked against Jesus and his friends. Didn't seem stacked, was stacked. But the disciples believed that Jesus was good for it, good for what he claimed he could do, that he would not only confront these evil forces, but usher in a new era, new life for Israel, for all of them. And they seem to have believed this truly. I mean, they followed him around for years. They seem to have believed this in their bones, at least on better days. And they seem to have had doubts too, but on better days, they seem to believe. They believed that Jesus was the one long discussed, the Messiah who would liberate the people. And there had been several before, would-be messiahs, well-intentioned and occasionally impressive, but each rebellion put down. But then Jesus. Enter Jesus, and now they believe it's going to happen. After centuries and centuries of oppression, it's going to happen. And they were as confident as any true believers in any fringe cult, which is why their confidence shattered as soon as the worst came upon them. Worse than worst, actually. As I keep saying, Jesus was killed. And he wasn't just killed. He was humiliated. The one they believed was the answer to it all was utterly devastated and destroyed. He was made to look like a fool, powerless, and paraded out for everyone to see and to ridicule. Imagine how you would feel if you had all of the confidence of these disciples in a Messiah, in a Savior, in an answer to life, only to have your hopes and dreams utterly and completely trampled as if underfoot. Maybe you don't have to stretch your imagination to imagine what that would be like. Maybe you've had experiences that felt like that. And please recall how years before these disciples left their vocations, their homes, and much else to go trekking off after Jesus. I only mention it to emphasize that it's all gone. All of the invested time and energy and space they had given the Jesus movement, gone. Jesus died. What I'm trying to do is paint a picture of hopelessness. Forgive me, but that is what they faced. Jesus himself is reported to have cried out just before he died, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The disciples then fled into the night, and their hopes for Israel's liberation were then gone, dead along with Jesus. So what can you do? What can a disciple count on when God is absent? It's been the answer of the church. It's been our job to say this, especially at Easter. What to do? Well, he came back. Against the odds and over the laws that govern the created realms even, Jesus came back from the dead. This is what the early disciples claimed. In the face of hopelessness, this was what they said. Their situation went in that moment from absolutely hopeless to, well, what would you call it? I'd say better than the feeling you get when you hear the best news you've ever heard. Better than my children probably felt the first time they understood what happens around Christmas. Like oxygen to a drowning person, Jesus' return must have been the most astonishing and amazing thing. Speaking of drowning persons, this is the illustration I came up with, trying to remember from my past. What were some illustrations that helped me better understand the feeling of being surprised by this hope in the face of hopelessness? I came up with this. I remembered watching a movie as a child where these poor fellas were trapped inside a sunken submarine. It was a very stressful movie. But there was this part where one guy was trapped in a room that was quickly filling with water, up to his chest, his chin. You get the picture. Swimming up to the ceiling, looking for a little pocket of air. His situation, hopeless. His future certain, and his future is he will soon be dead. His face pressed against the door on the ceiling. And I know he's toast as a child watching this. Why did they let me watch this? And suddenly, something gave. A hatch opened above him, and he was able to crawl out to safety. So that image is well pressed into my mind's eye because it became the most poignant illustration for me as a child of someone who is hopelessly desperate, with no expectation to be saved, but then is saved unexpectedly and with little to no expectation that help was about to find them. Or, to quote the gospel story, suddenly Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." And they came to him, took hold of his feet and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers and sisters to go to Galilee. There they will see me." You better believe that when they saw him, it was like oxygen to that drowning man, maybe more so. Jesus' friends were met with this good news. And good news, that's putting it mildly, but I got it because I use those words, because that's what the word gospel literally means. What we call this message, the word gospel, means good news. But I think maybe we need a better word for it, or perhaps we ought to always write it out in big, bold letters when we spell it. Good news. For you see, the greatest empire known in that region of the world put its entire weight of force against Jesus and his movement. They crushed him. They crushed the Jesus movement. But the good news, better than good news, is despite this, they did not stop it. We are meant to hear this story every year so that we will not forget that there is a power in God to call life from every dark tomb. Jesus' death and resurrection should convince us that despite the very worst happening in your world or in your life, there is hope for life on the other side. Our bodies, our broken hearts, all one day stitched up like Jesus. Nothing is going to crush us, at least not forever. And this is good news for me. As I was mentioning earlier about my recent struggles, yes, good news. Namely, good news for someone who has been sidelined in life recently by depression and anxiety. This is my first week back after a long absence where I am still trying to learn how to live well with these things. And I don't know if you've ever been through it, but it is real hard. And I had a mental breakdown because I didn't know how to cope. Fortunately, I've found some, although not total, relief. Through therapy, medicine, and new spiritual disciplines that I'm trying on, I began to recover and am still learning about my brain and how it works. Which is why I penciled in Easter, about a month ago, I penciled in Easter as my return date. I was beginning to feel better and to think about life after the hopelessness. And so what better date than Easter, right? I had hoped that by Easter I'd be whistling, humming under my breath, walking with a skip to my step, full of pep, fully restored. I think the feeling I've been chasing is euphoria or joy. Very normal, very natural. Except those are rare feelings. And as the day drew nearer, I was more and more aware that I was not, let's just say, 100%. Significantly better, but still. So I was sharing these feelings with my therapist, and he reminded me of what happened after Jesus returned. He didn't return to a world perfectly restored. He returned to the same world with the same problems. His return convinced his disciples of the power God has over the forces of evil, but those forces are still very much at play. But after Easter, the disciples knew that come what may, the God revealed by Jesus' death and resurrection was still with them. They knew that ultimately God will redeem and restore the world, and that the forces arrayed against them could do nothing to them that God couldn't handle. After all, not to harp on it, but that is what we're supposed to do on Easter. After all, they killed Jesus. And that just helped birth the church. But Jesus would leave them for good, at least in the way that they had known him before. But the disciples, rather than despairing at the departure of their Messiah, would discover that they were his body. That in a mysterious way, he was with them and they were him. His hands, feet, mouth, heart, Jesus' witnesses in the world. And they would discover again and again what Jesus taught them, that after each little or grandiose death, God calls out more life. Life and more life. For me, for you, and for the human race. So I returned this week better, but knowing that there will be setbacks. And some of them might be quite serious, but I know that the God who resurrects us to life after our many little deaths will call me to life even now. In our world full of violence, confusion, anger, and division, it might feel as though we are facing our own collective deaths, even after Easter. Our own collective deaths, if not our final ends. At least we can admit that the world seems a frightening place these days. Wars, political strife, civil unrest, global pandemics, and climate change. All of these things may feel like precursors to some very bad endings. But, and hear me, body of Christ, alive in 2023, there is hope after each of these potential tombs. Or if they will not turn into tombs, there is hope after each of these crises, because Jesus lives. And because he lives in us and through us, the same hope given the disciples after Jesus' execution is ours, right here, right now. What are you facing? What are we facing together? Whatever the case, I hope that on this week of all weeks, on Easter Day of all days, you will be given the gift of hope. Hope like what found the Israelites when they were thirsting in the desert and water came from a rock. Hope like what found Hagar, who was wandering through the desert with her dying child, when she was given a hopeful message and sustenance to survive. Hope like what Isaiah saw, where he found it in his heart to find meaning and hope for his people, for his country, in a cut-down tree. He wrote, "A shoot shall come from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots," a symbol of Israel's rebirth. So I believe that there is hope for you and for me, hope for us all, and even for the entire human race. And why? Because if Jesus still lives, despite everything that has happened to us, then I think that maybe we'll see our own redemption. Hopefully, we'll see it very soon. This has been the Northwood Podcast. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe to the podcast by way of whatever app you use to listen, or leave a comment. These points of engagement drive more traffic our way. Or check out our website, www.indyncc.org. And also check out the other podcasts produced by the All Indiana Podcast Network. Until next time, this has been the Northwood Podcast. I am Heath Jones. Peace.